Well, Charles, it seems like you left town just in time. Everything is going to pot, as it were. How you
I know,
doing?
just I'm doing well. I mean, I leave you in charge of the world for, not even 24 hours, and it
I
just
know.
blows up.
Terrible. Terrible. We should tell people that you're in an undisclosed location that we will not disclose. But in order to accommodate your international travel schedule, we are pre-recording this video earlier than it will broadcast. And I mention that only because the condition that we're in throughout the world and in New York is so volatile right now that if anything happens in between the time we're recording this video and when it gets broadcast later today at 3 p.m. Eastern, if people are wondering like, hey, how come Charles didn't say anything about Israel nuking Iran? It's because that hasn't happened yet. And let's hope it doesn't. What do you think,
Yeah.
Charles, about all these insane developments literally like overnight from the time you left? Everything's falling apart.
Yeah, and hence the art department's astute choice of the poster here of 50 years of living dangerously. I mean, this attack in Israel occurred I believe, 50 years to the date of the Yom Kippur War in 73. And that was a dread event then. This is a dread event now. I am not Jewish, but I believe the Yom Kippur uh, uh, holiday. It's not really a celebration. Isn't it a remembrance day? It's a day of atonement, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's the new
And
year
so,
and you're supposed to, ask for forgiveness for your sins and then the forgiveness is granted on Yom Kippur.
well, but during the long Ramadan is typically, I think, about 30 days. I believe it is based on a lunar cycle, and so it can depend. But
Right.
of course, during Ramadan, there's all this chatter from the squad and elsewhere that you can't attack an Islamic nation on Ramadan. And here, for the second time, there was this attack. And before we get into the potential lack of balance, who's right, who's wrong, and all this kind of stuff, I think what we should step back and say, 50 years of intervening, more than 50 years of intervening, has it hasn't seemed to lead to global peace. But more importantly, 50 years of Joe Biden being a senator, 50 years of Joe
Right.
Biden being at a senior level in politics, he is a stone cold, ignorant, stupid liar who began his career lying about the role that he played talking to Golda Meir with respect to, I think, events which predated his role as a senator. And as Bob
Wait.
Gates, the former Secretary of Defense under Obama, a Republican, said, Joe Biden has screwed up every major policy decision that he's ever had. And here,
But wait, Charles,
recently,
hang on. How did he have opportunity to interact with Golda Meir before he was a senator? What was he doing that put him in touch with an
he,
international leader?
he made it up.
Ah, because he
And
entered
so,
January 3rd, 1973. The Yom Kippur War happened later that same year.
right. I mean, he's just a serial embellisher, which is a polite way of saying he's a stone cold liar. But going into more recent history, the so-called JCPOA, which was the original Iran treaty, which they snuck through, Obama snuck through with Kerry, because they knew they couldn't pass it as a treaty. They knew they couldn't get the required vote in the Senate, so they snuck it through. That was a disaster. Trump rightly stomped on it, and then Biden snuck it back in. And recently, whatever it was, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, it was revealed that we, in a circuitous way, of course, we didn't directly send $6 billion to Iran. We allowed Qatar to release funds to Iran. But anyway, Iran gets $6 billion for a small number of hostages. And now this happens several days, weeks later. And this is on top of Afghanistan, our rush to leave Afghanistan in a disgusting manner, where we didn't tell our allies, we didn't protect those who were brave enough inside Afghanistan to try to work with NATO and the U.S. for 20 years. We didn't give them the decency of telling them what we were really going to do. We rushed for the hills. We left very valuable military equipment standing there. We left a base that was an important base. And I'm not in favor of America having all these bases all over the world. But if you have it, you certainly shouldn't just give it away for nothing. To who? To China, who quickly took control of that base. And that base, as former President Trump points out, is important because the place where the Chinese Communist Party and the People's Liberation Army store and manufacture their nuclear weapons is quite close to that base. So it was a huge win for China when we rushed away. And now in the Middle East, to over the objections of many sane people, to give this money to Iran, to embolden Iran. Clearly, Iran is behind, I would guess, providing material aid and comfort to Hamas and likely soon to Hezbollah and elsewhere. And this is just a masterclass in shit show. And it's destructive. And in addition, what Biden apparently did, and I don't have the guy's name to mind at the moment, I'm a little jet lagged, but he made an appointment of somebody to get involved in this Middle East negotiating process, who was raided by the FBI.
Whoa.
He's been just recently. I mean, so
there's one more thing I want to share with you, Charles, that's really important. Just in June, Newsweek was reporting that Israel expressed concern that U.S. weapons intended for Ukraine were ending up in Iran's hands. And then this morning, somebody put out on Telegram a video. It's in a foreign language that I don't speak, but the translation claims that it's somebody thanking whoever for sending these weapons from Ukraine that they're using in Israel right now.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. And, people need to understand that just because a bunch of windbags either decide to outlaw something or to put sanctions on some activity doesn't mean the activity will stop. In fact, all you're doing by sanctions and these laws is increasing the black market price for whatever else you're trying to stop. If you want to go to the level of stamping something out, you have to be serious about it. You have to not, write regulations and laws and white papers. You go in and you legally, or if you're at war, following the conventions of war, you take you take the offender out. You just take them out, and we're not
Charles,
doing that.
Isn't that dangerous? Because see, here's what I'm concerned with. They're now saying, this is from this morning, Netanyahu tells Gaza residents to clear out and says the Israeli Defense Force will use all its strength to destroy Hamas. Now that sounds to me like they're going to send missiles and bombs and every building in Gaza is just going to get crushed. But here's my concern. Who is among all these people that have been coming across the border? There's 7 million or whatever number of million. Don't we have some Hamas terrorist force sleeper cell likely in the United States right now?
How about in Congress? But
right.
But my point, Jason, I wasn't referring so much to Israel then. I was saying, take, for example, the question of opium in Afghanistan, whether under the Taliban, as Obama likes to call them now, or under administrations supported by NATO, somehow we couldn't stop the opium trade, which is very significant. A lot of the world's opium comes out of Afghanistan. If we were serious about doing that, we would have gone to the level of countries like Singapore and elsewhere. For minor infractions connected to the production and distribution of opium, you will be executed. You will be publicly executed, including, and especially including, if you're U.S. troops or NATO troops protecting the growers for kickbacks back home, which I suspect happened. And we're just not. We weren't serious about getting things right in Afghanistan. We haven't been serious now. We've been meddling in the Middle East for a long time, allowing ourselves to get into the position long ago where we were dependent on Middle East sourced oil when we should have been encouraging production inside the United States of fossil fuels and nuclear energy and other sources, something we could have done without kowtowing to anybody around the world. We didn't do that under Republicans, under Democrats. And more importantly, we went through We were on a hopeful path under Trump, an amazingly hopeful path, where it might have been, absent COVID, it might have been that we would have had Abrahamic accords with Saudi Arabia. And had that happened, all the people who had been holding out would have rushed to embrace this, and we wouldn't be in this place. We would have had a discussion with the people who figured out in Hamas and Hezbollah and elsewhere that you can just as the Clintons do with charities, you can tell a sob story, and you can get all kinds of foreign aid pretending that you're helping the Palestinians, when in fact what you're doing is you're stealing that money, which is what the leadership of Hamas does. It's what the leadership of Hezbollah does. If we truly cared about the Palestinian people, there would have been a solution long ago, but that's not the case. It's simply not the case.
I think they want this war, Charles. I mean, think about it. Mark Milley, that whole dust up with Trump and the whatever document he was talking about at Mar-a-Lago, it's an article from like Time that says Milley wanted Trump to attack Iran. I mean, all we've been hearing about since I'm a kid. I remember being at a football game when I was like 8, and Iran had taken the hostages, and everybody had these like F Iran. I mean, I was a little kid, so seeing the F word was kind of like, ooh. But it was like going on back then, and installing the Shah. That was all CIA stuff. We've been messing around in the Middle East forever, and everywhere we go and mess around, it just makes it worse. The only place we're not spending billions to rebuild the infrastructure is right here, and it's crumbling all around us. The United States is already a third world country. They're now just importing the population to make it really feel that way.
Third world, fourth world portions of the United States. I mean, just to relate my trip out to Kennedy Airport, and I want to talk about the first country I went to, and I'm not in that country right now, so I can talk about it. But on the way out to the airport, I had a lift car because it's too dangerous to go on the street in the neighborhood in which I live at 7 a.m. and try to hail a cab. It's too dangerous. There are too many crazies. So the lift guy comes right on. It takes 4 minutes to get to my front door. I get in the lift car. We go down to try to head up to the airport, and there are very large numbers of people with either those with wheelchairs or those walkers.
Yeah.
And sadly, many of these people were black bums. Either asleep or talking to one another or whatever. It was not a nice morning. We ended up over on the access road to one of those bridges, and I noticed in 3 lanes of traffic, there was this in the median or close to the median. There was a guy in a wheelchair who was sort of hunched over, and it appeared to me that he had his pants down. As I was, because you could see his legs and his pants seemed to be bunched at his ankles. Sure enough, as we passed him, he stood up. He had no pants on. He was buck naked. And there were 3 lanes of traffic in either direction.
Was this Eric Adams?
He was in Colombia. It's probably de Blasio at the end of one of his failed new dates. But anyway, no, it was just some bum. And bums everywhere, buildings falling down, nothing really new. I get to Kennedy Airport, and it was, it wasn't horrible, but I've seen better airports in, not as big, obviously, in Malaysia. And
oh, Charles, you froze. So this happened earlier when we were setting up. We might have to reconnect Charles here, but something going on with the internet in this foreign location. Well, we'll just vamp while we're waiting for Charles to reconnect. This will take about a minute. As I mentioned, if you're just joining us, we're pre-recording this episode to accommodate a bit of international travel that Charles is doing for the next little bit here. Let's just let him know. Okay, here he's back. Charles, can you hear me? Might take a second to reconnect. Oh, well, now it totally disconnected. Anyway, we're pre-recording this episode to accommodate Charles's international travel. And if anything happens in between the pre-recording time and the scheduled broadcast time, which is 3 p.m., we're just recording it earlier today. There's Charles. He's back. Hey, Charles. Just get the audio reconnected. Yeah, we got you.
I think I was saying that I've been in airports that are far nicer in much smaller countries. But anyway, I get on this flight on a wonderful airline, Emirates Airline. I don't have any stock in any airline company, so I'm not promoting it financially. But it was a delightful flight. I stayed in a modest hotel near the airport, but every aspect, the arrival was quick. You know, the people were all enthusiastic. The airport is massively better than it was the last time I was there. Wonderful shops. I always ask the people I interact with, where are you from? I didn't meet a single person who was from the UAE. They were all from Tibet and Nepal and Philippines and whatever. But just a total can-do attitude. And why is that? They had on the flight. I listened to these interviews of various government officials, and they were saying, listen, we regard Dubai as Dubai Inc. It is a private sector effort. We are lowering taxes. We are trying to attract foreign talent. We want to attract 1 million highly qualified people to come over to Dubai with their families and bring their children. And it's a very smart strategy, frankly. We are doing the polar opposite. We have a dingbat as a mayor. We have a dunce as a governor. We have a corrupt idiot fool as a president, and our bureaucracy they just don't know what they're doing. And there is a global marketplace, and the people in UAE appreciate that. And I predict that left to its own devices, assuming this Middle East war doesn't result in a nuclear exchange, it's possible that Dubai one day, or UAE, or a country like it, will rival, if not exceed, New York City as a financial center. It's highly possible, given the crime spree that's in New York, the lack of laws and regulations in New York, the uncertainty over things, the corruption in New York. Contrast that with there are problems in Dubai. I'm not trying to say it's perfect. It is a monarchy, which I don't like.
No,
but I'd rather, in some ways, I'd rather live in a smaller place like that, even with the weather, which is awful in the summer. I'd rather live and know that every day my chance of being shot is very low in Dubai by a stranger or a madman on drugs. They don't really have a drug problem in Dubai the way we do in New York City. And it's just on so many levels. I mean, I was flying, I'm not going to say precisely when, but I was flying, and the news about what's going on in the Middle East came as a surprise after I landed. So I haven't really been fully able to assess the far-reaching permutations of what could happen. I suspect it's not going to stop with Hamas, nor is it going to stop simply. It's not just going to be an internal Israeli problem. I think the early reports out of Saudi Arabia and out of Qatar and out of Russia, and I haven't heard what China and India are saying yet about this. But this is a gaping wound. It could be a mortal wound for world peace. Yeah. On top of Ukraine, on top of Afghanistan, on top of what's going on with Biden's corrupt activities, an attempt to cover them up.
Yeah, I mean, Benjamin Netanyahu has right away said this is a declaration of war, not just a military operation. And I mean, in my view, Charles, as I was beginning to say, you got Milley, and every war hawk in the world has been talking about doing a war with Iran. Every war hawk in the United States, I should say, has been talking about doing a war with Iran forever. This just seems like the entree to that. We're already hearing language like this is Israel's 9/11, and we know what 9/11 led to. I just think that this is a very likely Israel's going to nuke Iran.
No, I hope they wouldn't do that, but
they do some stupid stuff.
Well, in this case, I would say Iran at first blush looks, whoever's behind this would appear to, I mean, remember there was, I was watching because I had no options, CNN, and the Nimrods there were saying that their sources in Washington, D.C. believe that the solution is to topple the Netanyahu regime and encourage a new left-leaning regime to come into power. And this is the solution of the Biden administration. Now, like, hang on, what do you say? That it's okay for the U.S., excuse me, now to meddle in the internal affairs of Israel and topple its elected leadership, but it's really a bad thing for Russia to do that, as you have been alleging falsely.
Yeah.
Not you, Jason.
Yeah, no.
For however many years now.
Joe Biden.
You know, these are people who just they don't have principles in our government. They don't have principles. They don't have a knowledge of history. They're in this for the money. They talk about public service bullshit. Name one selfless thing that Joe Biden has ever done. Selfless. Name one. You know. So this is what you. I mean, I did notice in my travels that there's video. I don't know if it's true of Joe Biden allegedly kicking his own dog.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that's not a good way to take care of dogs. I don't, or anything.
But it makes sense that the dog is biting people because Joe Biden kicks his dog in viral video. I mean, who kicks their own dog? You shouldn't kick any dog. But like attacking defenseless animals is kind of like serial killer behavior. Where is the video here?
Well, I think it was on Rantingly, but it may have been on Zero Hedge. But the thing is, that's one I did send you as well. The thing of it is, this isn't the only incident that we've heard about. Remember, Biden claimed that he slipped in the shower and broke his ankle because he was fooling around with his dog.
Oh, maybe he just kicked him and broke his ankle on the dog.
Right? Yeah, it's just. This is the kind of, again, I don't come at this from being, you know, a dog lover, a longtime expert and dog owner. I just think
but it's just decency.
Yeah, well, there's no decency exhibited in this family.
Yeah. No. Terrible. But this is why the dog is biting everybody. The dog is abused.
And well, how many people in the Biden family aren't abused, including possibly Joe Biden himself? I mean, I don't know enough about Joe Biden's upbringing. I do know that he was a, disaster as a student.
Charles, we've only got 2 minutes until we're going to make our way over to the First Amendment Forum, where I want to ask you specifically, we can't really talk about this here, because if you say anything outside the realm of what YouTube considers to be the correct answer, you're just not allowed to debate. But just like 9/11, this incident that occurred yesterday or overnight the day before time zone in Israel, they're saying, oh, this is an incredible intelligence failure, just like 9/11, even though we're the Mossad and the CIA is probably also extremely active in Israel and very concerned about what's going on in the Middle East and apparently has loads of surveillance capabilities and knows everything about international terrorism. How did the CIA and Mossad totally miss this? And are we about to see, just like we did on 9/11 with the Patriot Act, another push toward, well, obviously we need more intelligence and more surveillance because this team failed so badly, we need to just give more money and resources to the same idiots who can't do what we hired them to do in the first place?
Well, I understand how the CIA would have missed it, because they would have probably been told to miss it. On the other hand, what I don't understand is how Mossad would have missed these developments. I mean, what we lack apparently in the Middle East, we lack many things around the world, but what we particularly lack in the Middle East, from the American side, and I, query, why is America wasting a lot of time on intelligence operations in the Middle East when we have an educational system that's crumbled, and we have a financial system that is near meltdown status. We have our finances out of control. Long list, but the bottom line is we don't have a lot of credible people we might insert into these countries who speak not only Arabic, but the other languages and would be accepted. We don't have them. On the other hand, within Mossad, I think they have quite a few sources. So it's
I
more
got to pause you,
surprising to
Charles.
me.
I got to pause you, Charles, because we're going to finish this conversation on the other side. But I leave with this question, and we will answer this once we get into the First Amendment forum. I want you to tell us, Charles, if you hired an expert to analyze a company that you were going to buy or sell on behalf of a client for Dylan Reed, and their analysis resulted in the exact opposite happening. You lost billions of dollars for your clients having based your assessment on this expert, and you went to them and said, how did you fail so catastrophically? And they said to you, we have no idea how this could have happened. When we come back from the break, I want you to answer what your response would be to such an expert providing that answer. We'll be right back. People are going to be able to join us on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, and crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com. Don't go anywhere. Charles is going to answer this very important question. I think I kind of already know the answer. Stay with us, everybody.